This mic is a quarter of the price of this one. Let's see how they compare. This microphone is the Behringer UltraVoice XM8500 and it sells in the UK for just £15. In fact, if you go to Thomann, you'll get it for £12. That is an amazing value, because when you hear this, you'll realise that actually this isn't a bad sounding mic really at all. It's very similar to the Shure SM58. This one retails around about £90, £15. So this is a quarter of the price. Build is very similar, size very similar. The plugs are just slightly different. There's the XLR plugs, and those plugs, this one you can see is silver, this one is gold plated. And basically they look very, very similar. I do like the darker top on this one. I tried to get this one onto this one, but actually they don't fit, which is a shame, because I think in a spotlight or in lights this won't show so much. I don't like the brightness of the SM58 top. I prefer a darker one. But you can see they're really similar, both dynamics, both cardioid microphones. And when you listen to them, you'll find that they sound sort of similar. There are a few differences that I'll explain now. First of all, this one cuts off in the bass a little bit higher than this one. So the Behringer has just a bit more of a cut off in the bass region. The other big difference is that there is a slight slope up on the Behringer in the mids, whereas this one is a little bit more flat. In fact, actually this one is probably just a little bit scooped in the mids. And then in the treble, this one has two peaks in the treble. I think one's about 4 to 5k and the other one's about 10, and the peaks are quite strong. They're at 10 dB, and this one has a peak somewhere in the same region, somewhere in about 4 or 5 I think it is, but the peak is about 5. So this is a little bit more gentle in the top end, but when you hear them you're going to be really, really surprised. So let's hear them. This is the sound of the Shure SM58, and most of us who use microphones are pretty familiar with this one because it's been around for such a long time and it's used on stage by so many people for vocals, for singing. Not so much used for speech. Sometimes we hear them on podcasts and video things, but it's not so much used. I don't see it so much because people prefer to get the bigger ones, but this is a pretty respectable microphone. It's got a nice mid-range, and that's the good thing about it, and it's kind of close almost to the SM7B. Very, very close if you listen very carefully. Now this is the sound from the front, this is the sound from the side, this is the sound from the rear, back to the side, and this is the front again. And the beauty of these dynamic microphones is the fact that they do reject the room sounds really, really well, and they're often overlooked because people say they're not as detailed, but actually if you've got a room that's not treated, these microphones are pretty good, to say the least. This is the sound of the Behringer UltraVoice XM8500, and indeed I did have to turn the gain down. This one is slightly more sensitive, which is good news for people who are looking for a dynamic microphone, because if you haven't got a really quiet preamp, you're using them for these microphones at the top of their range, and you're going to get a little bit of noise from your preamps unless you want to boost it with something else. And the thing is this one, you can actually back the gain down a little bit as long as the sound is acceptable. Now if this is close to the SM58 and it's acceptable, then it's a really good buy, because I can buy 4 of these for the Shure SM58. So this one is actually louder and as a hotter output, which is really nice to know. So this is the Behringer from the front, this is from the side, this is from the rear, back to the side, and that's the front again. And again we've got hopefully good rejection from this microphone as well, so that you can compare the output of the two microphones. This is the Behringer UltraVoice XM8500, and I've set the gain to suit this one because this is the loudest one. So now I'm going to quickly swap over to the SM58 so you can hear what the volume differences are between the two microphones. This is the Shure SM58, and I haven't moved the gain compared to the Behringer, so you can hear that this one is just slightly, maybe a little bit quieter, because I noticed on the figures that this one's got a lower sensitivity and also a slightly higher impedance. So the difference in volume may be enough to make you think, oh, that Behringer is going to be quite useful. So let's compare now how they sound without changing the gain, how they compare on the fronts and the sides. So this is the microphone from the front. This is the microphone from the side. This is the XM8500 on the front. XM8500 on the side. I'm now on the back end of the Shure. Now listen here for the tone, the timbre, because this is where this sound can sometimes be mixed in with the front sound. That's the back end of the Shure SM58. This is the back end of the XM8500. That's the back end of the XM8500, and hopefully you're hearing not too much bass coming in here, because very often these microphones can go a little bit woolly on the back. Another thing that you might be doing is you might be hand holding the microphone. So I'm just going to test the handling noise. This is the Behringer, and if I keep talking while I'm doing it, and I'm being quite ferocious, I'm playing it like an oboe actually. Here we are. You know, just do it the right way round, shall we? That's the sound of the Behringer, and it's possibly pretty tappy at the moment because I'm giving it some. Okay, that's the Behringer, and this is the sound of the SM58 being tapped and played like an oboe. And I'm giving it quite a lot of taps there, so it's quite hard. You can hear whether the body is showing on the thing. So after comparing these two mics, you've probably heard that this one doesn't do too badly at £15. The Behringer XM8500 is a really good value microphone. There's a couple of other little differences I haven't described. First of all, the impedance, the output impedance of this one, of the Shure, is 300 ohms, and this one is 150. So that suggests that this one might be a little bit louder. But also, not only that, the sensitivities are different. This one is minus 50 dB, this one is minus 56. So that's why this one comes out louder, and that very fact is actually very useful for people who have got preamps that maybe don't work so well at their top end. Sometimes with preamps you get them to the top end of their range, they're not working at their best up there, and you get quite a bit of noise. So this one will take just a little bit less gain than the Shure, which is good news for people if you haven't got a particularly quiet preamp and you want to use a dynamic microphone. Why anyone would want to use a dynamic microphone? Well, people tell you that they're not so sensitive, they're not so detailed as a condenser microphone. But I must say, if you want to use one of these microphones or any dynamic microphone in a room that hasn't been treated, they will possibly work better than some condensers, because condensers are so sensitive to the surrounding environment, whereas these are a little bit less sensitive, plus the fact you need to hold them closer so you get that gain down and you get less reflection coming into the capsule. Both cardioids, both great dynamics. I really think this is fantastic value, really, really good value when you think you can get 4 of these for one of these, and the build is virtually identical. I think they're very, very close indeed. Great value microphone, and if you're looking for a good budget buy, there it is, the XM8500. Hope to see you next time. Cheers for now.